Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Governor's Resource Town Hall this morning to discuss Ida recovery and resources. We're thrilled to have you. We'll be getting started in just a minute. We're letting everybody get into the Zoom room and get your audio set up. Please note this morning's is a webinar, so you'll be able to see the speakers and ask questions through the Q&A box, which is a tab at the bottom of your screen, and we'll do our very best to answer those questions as they come in, provide answers from our panelists of experts here, or follow up after the event with an answer for you. I see that the numbers are slowing down and we have a precious hour with some great information coming your way. So with permission, Governor, what I'd like to do is kick it off by welcoming you to address about 300 people who have logged in this morning to our resource fair to discuss Ida recovery. I know that you have been up and down and across the state visiting sites and know a lot of what's going on firsthand, but I'm sure we'll have some questions here today where you can provide useful information. So please help me welcome everybody, the Governor of the great state of New Jersey, Governor Phil Murphy.
Deb, thank you for that. And thank you, more importantly, everyone, for taking time from your morning. I'm incredibly honored today to be joined by our senior senator, Bob Menendez. We will be hearing from the senator in a minute. I'm equally honored that we are joined by FEMA Federal Coordinating Officer and another friend of New Jersey, Patrick Cornbill. Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Patrick. We'll hear from both of them, as I mentioned, in a couple of minutes. And with us, not with prepared remarks, but ready to answer your questions, are a number of members of our administration: Department of Environmental Protection Commissioner Sean LaTourette, Banking and Insurance Commissioner Marlene Caride, Human Services Acting Commissioner Sarah Edelman, the Superintendent of the State Police Colonel Pat Callahan, and Dan Kelly, Executive Director of our Disaster Recovery Office. And by the way, here we are speaking about Ida and FEMA and the support the morning after. We had a whole lot more rain last night in New Jersey. I looked at the rain totals, Pat, this morning, and I noticed Hillsborough, which is a community I've visited not once, but twice since Ida hit, had almost 2 inches of rain again. These things are coming more frequently with more intensity. So a disaster response has to be a whole of government response and process. The federal government, the county government, the local governments, everyone pulling together. And that's exactly what we're doing here to help everyone impacted by the floods and tornadoes that accompanied the remnants of Tropical Storm Ida. This was, I think, by any measure, the worst natural disaster to hit our state since Superstorm Sandy in 2012. Tragically, 30 losses of life. 12 counties have met the threshold for FEMA to make the major disaster declaration, enabling homeowners, by the way, importantly, especially those, not only those, but especially those who did not carry flood insurance, to seek FEMA assistance to rebuild and restore. I once again urge everyone to look into purchasing a flood insurance policy. Where it rains, it can flood, and it's best to prepare for the future today. I'm incredibly grateful to President Biden and his team, to Patrick and everyone at FEMA, to Senator Menendez and our congressional delegation, Colonel Callahan, Dan Kelly, the Office of Emergency Management at the State Police, and everyone who got this process moving quickly and has kept it moving forward. We have many state programs to help families get back on their feet. That's why I've asked members of our cabinet to be with us today. Where you have questions, they have answers and guidance. We are committed to making sure every family has the resources that they need to get back on their feet, back in a clean and safe home, and back to their lives. We are committed to making sure we don't just rebuild, but that we build back much more resiliently. It's not a matter of if the next devastating storm hits, it's about when, and making sure we're prepared. In the days after the floods, I toured, I know many of us did, multiple communities and spoke with many, many families. I saw homes filled with mud. I saw entire homes entirely swept off their foundations. I saw gutted downtown small businesses. I saw years of accumulated memories piled high on sidewalks or strewn about yards. I also saw the resilience and the goodness of our people, neighbors helping neighbors, and frankly, even perfect strangers stepping in to help families clean up. One thing Ida's floods and tornadoes could not sweep away was our Jersey values. I don't know where we would be without our congressional delegation, and I certainly don't know where we would be without its leader. So please help me welcome our senior senator, Bob Menendez.
Well, thank you, Governor, very much. Let me just say I appreciate your leadership, Governor, during these times of crisis and bringing a whole of government approach to bear down on making sure we support our citizens. And your work and coordination has been extraordinary, and your advocacy, even reaching into the White House here in Washington, has been so important. So thank you. And for that fact, your entire team, we've been working with them to get resources and information out to every New Jersey family whose lives been turned upside down by Tropical Storm Ida. You know, what began as a hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico turned into the second deadliest storm in New Jersey history. From record-setting rainfall to life-threatening floods to powerful tornadoes, Ida wreaked havoc across our state and claimed 30 precious lives who still mourn today. So to every family who lost a home, to every business owner who lost their livelihood, to every New Jerseyan now dealing with serious flood damage and daunting recovery, my heart is with you. As New Jersey's senior senator, I want you to know the power of my office is behind you, as well as you, Governor. I know the road to recovery will be long because I've been down this road before. In the aftermath of Superstorm Sandy, no one fought harder for displaced families and storm victims than me. When politicians from other regions try to block disaster aid for New Jersey after Sandy, I fought back and secured $60 billion to rebuild our region. When flood insurance premiums were set to skyrocket, I fought back and saved New Jersey homeowners nearly $50 million in premiums. And when Sandy survivors were cheated by their insurance companies, I successfully reopened the claims process, delivering homeowners an additional $260 million in previously denied claims. It took years for so many of these families to get back in their homes, but I never gave up. So make no mistake, I am ready to fight alongside you, Governor, for the people of New Jersey. We'll pull every lever of federal power possible to help our communities recover and our families rebuild from Tropical Storm Ida. Immediately following the storm, as the governor said, I led our congressional delegation's letter urging the president to support Governor Murphy's request for major disaster declarations. Fortunately, President Biden heeded our call, and as a result, additional FEMA resources and funds have been made available to Bergen, Essex, Gloucester, Hudson, Hunterdon, Mercer, Middlesex, Morris, Passaic, Somerset, Union, and Warren counties. These resources include FEMA's Public Assistance Program and individual assistance programs that provide rental assistance, repairs to uninsured homes, and help for rebuilding roads, railways, airports, and other public infrastructure damaged by the storm. And you'll learn about some of these programs today. As we speak, I'm speaking to you from Washington, where we're fighting to pass a new disaster supplemental bill. And that's basically how we attach money for disaster aid to a funding package that's already in the works. And while we have not yet won this battle, I can assure you that we will not stop until we do what we did after Superstorm Sandy. So to every homeowner in the process of making a flood insurance claim, if you run into trouble at any point, in addition to those that the governor will give you, you can contact my office. I would urge you, from my experiences after Sandy, be sure to document every interaction you have, every conversation you have with your insurance company. The unfortunate reality is that many of the flood insurance issues we uncovered in the aftermath of Superstorm Sandy still exist today. So I urge you to do that. And then lastly, I would just simply say, if anyone needs direct assistance, I'd urge you to look at my website, menendez.senate.gov. We have whole sections there that can be helpful to you. And of course, the office stands ready to help you, Governor, and anybody in New Jersey who needs a direct intervention with the federal agencies.
Senator, thank you. Cannot thank you enough. And you mentioned the work you did to get aid and support to rebuild and get families back on their feet after Sandy was unique and powerful and deeply felt. So thank you for your partnership then and now. And great to have you on. I know you may have to be coming and going, but it's great to have you leading the team here. With that, we're going to hear from one other speaker, and he's an important guy as well. This is the FEMA Federal Coordinating Officer, and a guy New Jersey, and we know very well. Please help me. Patrick's muted for some reason here. Deb, can you hear me, or Michelle?
Yes, sir, I can hear you. I'm trying to see Michelle, if you could help assist in unmuting.
Can you try now? Can you hear me now?
We can hear
We
you.
can. You betcha.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Governor, for having me, and thank all of you for allowing me a bit of your time. I know everyone who logged onto this call is here because you've got concerns about how you were affected by the recent disaster. And as the governor, I've been to many of your communities and seen the scale of human tragedy and individual despair that's happened as a result of this. Let me start by saying, if anyone out there still has immediate needs, like a roof over your head tonight, or clothing and food today, so the fastest way you can get help is to reach out to local and voluntary agencies to get those kinds of resources right away. Where FEMA can help you is in getting either back into your residence by getting you some repair money for your house if you're a homeowner, or getting you money to stay somewhere else if your home is inhabitable. If you're a homeowner or a renter, we can help you with that. You can get federal disaster assistance through our website, disasterassistance.gov, and apply online. That's the best way to do it. We also have a 1-800 number, 1-800-621-FEMA 3362. We recommend the website. It's faster. The phone line is used nationally, so with all the other disasters we've had nationwide, there can be a wait time. And you'll get through it faster on the web. Following registering with us, we do send out an inspector to each individual residence to verify the disaster-related losses. And you should hear from one of those people within a few days. But if you haven't heard in, say, 10 to 14 days from them, you might want to check back with us and make sure that your contact info is up to date, and we can get hold of you, and an inspector can reschedule an appointment with you. Just want to also say that disaster assistance from FEMA is really intended to, just as I said before, make sure that people have a habitable place to stay, either get you back in your house or get you another place to stay while you start your recovery. It's not meant to replace everything you lost. It's just meant to get people on their way, and we wish you the best in your recovery.
Patrick, do you have any handle on the amount of residences that you're dealing with right now in New Jersey?
So far, we've taken in over 52,000 applications from New Jerseyans, and we've also awarded out over $35 million. So our processes have been going very fast from the beginning. The rate at which we did damage assessments and the president signed a declaration, to the rate that we've opened up disaster recovery centers now in each county designated for our individual assistance program. And in processing these applications and getting money out. Our administrator of the agency, Administrator Criswell, said it was record-breaking speed on all fronts.
And could you spend a moment, Patrick, on small businesses? What advice do you have for small businesses, some of whom, as you know, were crushed?
Well, an important partner of ours in the federal disaster relief process is the Small Business Administration, and they offer low-interest, long-term loans for both physical injury to businesses and for economic injury if they simply suffered losses. The Small Business Administration can help those businesses. FEMA doesn't do grants for businesses. It's expected they'll carry insurance, but both the Small Business Administration will cover uninsured losses.
Do you have a website, or does somebody have a website for small businesses off the top of your head?
It's sba.gov. And you can also visit a Small Business Administration representative in one of the disaster recovery centers I mentioned. We've got one in each county, and Small Business Administration also has what they call business recovery centers in some counties that, in 3 counties that we don't have designated for FEMA assistance.
So you've got 12 counties where you've got a one-stop shop place for folks to go, and then 3 more counties where you've got sort of a smaller scaled down version of that.
Specifically for Small Business Administration, yes.
For SBA specific.
Yes.
That's a point for any of the small business folks. Do you happen to have those counties off the top of your head?
I can get them to you, sir.
Dan, do you have the 3?
So you're looking for the counties designated for small business assistance
Yeah, the three that are not major decks.
that are not, I have the ones that are.
Okay, so we'll get to that in a bit. Patrick, thank you so much for that. Senator, again, deep thanks for your leadership. Deb, can we go to some questions?
Absolutely, sir. Good morning again. And I'm going to start with a sample of 3 questions because they touch on what a lot of people have asked about. Jacqueline from Newark, Lisa from Hillsborough, and Raul from Piscataway all ask similar questions about what resources are available to people who need temporary housing while they wait for their primary residence to be repaired or they need to find new housing.
So this is again from Newark, from Piscataway, and
Hillsborough. So, all around
Yep.
the area.
So Patrick, what's the best advice there?
Like I said before, if somebody has an immediate need, they should contact a local agency or voluntary agency. They can call 211, the state's hotline for that, if they need somewhere to stay tonight. There are local governments and voluntary agencies that will house people in a hotel. FEMA can reimburse people for lodging expense in a hotel if they need to stay in a hotel temporarily. And also, one of the most expedient ways FEMA can get people assistance is through rental assistance. So if their home is not habitable and they make that clear on their initial registration, that's the fastest way to get assistance from FEMA. We can get people a rent check and they can look for a longer term place to stay.
So Patrick's mentioned a couple of times local organizations. Any chance Dan or Deb could post some of these in the chat box? Or Dan, do you have any suggestions right now?
Yeah, Governor, we'll post information in the chat box on local available resources here. That way everyone can view them in the Q&A.
That is something, Deb, if you can help us with that. I'm in Newark all the time. I'm going to be there in an hour, but I've specifically visited Piscataway and Hillsborough and saw the damage with my own eyes, and it took your breath away. So to all folks out there having the same challenges, we are with you. Deb, let's go to other ones.
You're sure. Gail from Maplewood has highlighted a question that a lot of people have, which in general has to do with the relationship between SBA for loans and FEMA for assistance. In her first question, many higher income residents were referred to SBA for a loan. She said her research shows she needs to apply for that loan first, and if we're not approved, they may or may not get FEMA assistance. But if we could help understand that relationship, there were quite a few questions in that area.
So it sounds to me like, and tell me either Patrick, Dan, or Pat, or anybody else out there, these are separate lanes. So if it is a housing residential matter, your disasterassistance.gov and the toll-free number that Patrick gave. If it's a small business, it's sba.gov, and we can get a phone number, which I'd also love to post in the chat box. Is that fair, Patrick and Dan?
Actually, they sort of go in sequence, because the Small Business Administration is an important partner of FEMA because they also offer assistance to homeowners and renters. And it's a part of the sequence of our program that FEMA first awards people money for repairs and a rental place to stay if necessary, as I said, and then we refer them to the Small Business Administration for a disaster loan, a homeowner loan. And the reason for that is that the Small Business Administration, through a loan program, can actually offer a lot more money than we can as FEMA as a grant program. And it's more like a replacement program. FEMA isn't about replacing things, it's about making sure people have a place to stay. SBA can actually replace a lot of things that were lost, a lot of things that we can't cover because they can do more money through a loan program. Now, let me also say that the Small Business Administration loan process is used to refer people back to FEMA if they don't qualify for SBA, back to FEMA for additional grants. So it's very important that people fill out those loan applications if FEMA refers them to that program, because it could refer them into additional grants from FEMA if they don't qualify for the SBA loan.
Okay, so let's make sure that we've got everybody following this. Start with FEMA, disasterassistance.gov, is correct?
Correct.
All right. Now, it shouldn't surprise any of us that the grant money is smaller than the loan money, because the grant money is one-way money, right? It goes out the door and it stays out the door. The long-term loan is intended to be repaid. So it's not surprising that the loan bucket is a lot bigger. Then would FEMA direct them to the SBA for potential homeowner loans, or do they go there on their own, under their own steam?
Oh, FEMA can direct them there. That's correct. It's part of the federal disaster assistance application process.
Okay.
You register with FEMA, and we will put you in that SBA loan by sending you a SBA homeowners loan application.
Got it. And then you're also saying, Patrick, you could do a round trip. You could start at FEMA, hopefully successfully get some grant money, but either way, get referred to SBA for some long-term loan money. And you may well get kicked back. Again, is that SBA that kicks you back, or does the individual homeowner have to take themselves back to FEMA for reconsideration of grants?
No, they'll be kicked back within our process,
Okay.
referred into the other needs assistance program, it's called.
Excellent. So hopefully that clarifies for Gail, but everybody start with FEMA, disasterassistance.gov, and the process may well take you to SBA and back to FEMA again. Obviously, this is separate and apart from if you've actually got a small business. And I think the advice there, Patrick, is go straight to SBA.gov.
Yes, sir. They can register with FEMA and we'll kick them into the SBA process, or they can go direct to FEMA. And we got that 1-800 number for you. They can use the website at SBA.gov, or they can call 1-800-659-2955 to go directly to the SBA.
If it were your home or your small business, rather, would you still start with FEMA just to make sure you're registered and then go to SBA?
For the business losses, I would probably go directly to SBA, but if someone also had damage to their residence, for example, they can just start with FEMA and they'll be kicked into both processes.
That's a residence, not the small business.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Governor, one quick point on the small business side of things too. There's obviously the SBA process, but just want to highlight EDA's program in New Jersey that is offering small business grants to Ida and Henri impacted businesses. That application period closes today at 5 p.m. So any businesses, they've been applying for several weeks now, but any businesses interested there should go to EDA's website. They've advertised it, small business grants for August and September, potential rent or mortgage if you're impacted by the storm. So another option out there too, on the state side, of course.
Great point. We put $10 million into that. Do you have the website off the top of your head, somebody?
I have it open. It's NJEDA. If you go on their homepage, their front page, it's they have the link to the Ida and Henri application page on it. So
njeda.gov.
NJEDA.com.
.com, correct. njeda.com. That's a very fair point, Dan. It's a $10 million bucket, including a carve out for Henri, where we know in communities like Monroe Township, Helmetta, to pick two that I looked at, were crushed. This is largely Ida money, but it's state money, and the application process ends today at 5 p.m. Thank you for that. Deb, back over to you. What do you got?
Sure. And just so you know, Gov, because our chat box isn't live here, we're only taking Q&A. We are going to follow up with all these resources in an email to everybody who's on the webinar today.
Okay.
So
And do you have all their emails?
Yes, when they registered, we were able to do that, so we can follow up with written responses and all the resources. So I want to, Susanna from Hopewell has chimed in, asking for assistance for hundreds of tons of rocks deposited in our stream by Ida floodwaters, which is now causing flooding in our home.
Man, I mean, Hopewell.
I'm happy to take that, Deb.
Yeah, Sean, before you jump in, Hopewell was crushed, and Hopewell was where we had some incredibly heroic, as we did up and down the state, police officers, in their case, first responders more broadly, putting their lives literally on the line. And that was one of the, Pat, am I right? That's the one where the guys were hanging on to the trees and discharging their weapons in the air because nobody could hear them. The rain and flooding was so loud.
That's right, Gov.
Sean LaTourette, Commissioner, Department of Environmental Protection. What do you got on that one?
With respect to stream cleanings, we're working with communities. In that respect, I would direct the Hopewell resident to DEP's Ida webpage. If you go to nj.gov/DEP/Ida, IDA, click on the stream cleaning link. There will be in that link contacts at DEP for you to reach out to. I would suggest that you reach for Miss Suzanne Biggins. Her contact information is at the bottom of that page.
Thank you, Sean. I would love to ask Senator Menendez a question. Senator, what are the prospects that we get serious climate resiliency infrastructure passed through Congress, signed by the president?
Well, Governor, the Senate already passed it, and it is pending in the House. And I believe it will happen. I think there's a lot of twists and turns, but it'll happen in the House at some point, hopefully sooner rather than later. And that $1.5 trillion bill has a lot of provisions for climate resiliency that certainly would help our state.
Amen. I mean, given our density, folks know this, but we're the most densely populated state in America. We've got a location which is second to none, but very exposed. I don't think there's a bigger winner from that than New Jersey. So, Senator, thank you for your leadership. Deb, what do we got?
I have Iman from Little Ferry, who wants to know about if I live in an apartment complex, am I eligible for resources through FEMA and other types of assistance? And
Yeah.
also someone looking for employment.
Same person?
Same person.
Okay.
So if you're a renter.
Why don't you take the employment piece of this, Deb, and get them any information that we've got at either Department of Labor. God knows there's a lot of job openings right now. There's a big gap between our recovery and the economy generally and the labor market. So there are a number of sources and connections we can hopefully make for them. But let me go to Patrick and Dan on the question. And by the way, Little Ferry is an example of a place. This is not the first time. I remember, right, Pat, when we and Dan, we got in there, I remember cars being strewn across a creek that backed up and flooded the heck out of it. We were in a neighborhood, Dan, you and I, 3+ years ago, as I recall. And again, this is not the first time in a lot of these communities. What advice do you have for a renter in an apartment complex? Patrick?
Yeah, FEMA may be able to help you if you had damage from the incident. We can help you either with a place to stay to make sure if your place isn't habitable, we can give you assistance to stay somewhere else until the place is made habitable or until you move on to a more permanent housing solution. Or we may be able to help with contents of your apartment. So yeah, I would highly encourage you to register with FEMA if you had any damages as a renter. And SBA might be able to help in that process as well. Also, FEMA is going to support the state through the Disaster Unemployment Assistance Program. So if you were a category of employee or self-employed that may not have otherwise qualified for unemployment assistance, you may qualify for it now under the disaster assistance FEMA is coordinating with the state.
Patrick, what if I'm in an apartment on the 3rd floor, but, and there are examples of this. I saw in Elizabeth, a tragic one. My apartment is fine, but there's enormous damage to the complex, and it's deemed uninhabitable, even though my apartment per se was okay. What advice do you have there?
Well, your key word there, Governor, was uninhabitable. If it's not inhabitable or not accessible, then that may qualify for FEMA assistance.
Okay, so even though it's unscathed, if I'm not allowed to live in it, then
yeah, if it's lacking essential utilities, if it's inaccessible, for example, we may be able to help somebody with a place to stay.
Got it.
Until they can get back into their home.
Got it. And I suspect there are more than a few examples of that. So that's
Sure.
going to be a reality.
Governor, one quick follow-up on the state side on that.
Yeah, please.
For individuals, and Patrick covered the FEMA side when you get to tap into assistance. We all know there's a little bit, it can be tough to find housing out there right now. I want to just highlight that HMFA has launched its Housing Resource Center on HMFA's website that can connect renters with landlords who have space available. So if you have the resources but need to find a space, that can be a resource to helping find a home in your community.
Can you, a website on that one?
Yep, it's nj.gov, /NJHRC/ New Jersey Housing Resource Center.
Nice and easy, rolls off the tongue. Deb, will you be sending an email to everybody, and then can you just list all of these various? If your problem is X, this is the website.
Yes. Every time one of these experts here gives us another link, or I'm writing it down to put in the email.
Okay,
So
bless you.
getting my education too today.
Amen. Fire away.
I'm going to move to Barbara from Hoboken, who I think asks a really good question on a lot of people's minds about she's concerned about finding reliable certified professionals to do the work. For her, it's specifically in a small condo building to alleviate flooding, but I'm sure there's lots of people looking for contractors out there right now, and they want to make sure they're hiring someone who is appropriate for the work and qualified.
Yeah. You talk about a community that floods on a regular basis, which is why that Rebuild by Design project is so critically important. And Senator, you've been a huge leader on that one to get that thing finally built. And so there's a special place in hell for the folks who try to take advantage of people during a disaster. And unfortunately, there aren't many of them, but there are bad apples out there, contractors or otherwise, who try to take advantage of you. Dan or Marlene, any advice on where to go to make sure somebody's got all the T's crossed and I's dotted?
Sure.
So on the part of the department, we license public adjusters. So if they're going to use a public adjuster when they're working with their insurance company, just make sure that they're licensed through our department. But that's just when they're dealing with their insurance company. Dan perhaps has more information for contractors.
Well said, Dan.
Yeah, sure, Governor, and you've highlighted it. You know, sometimes the worst of times brings out the best in people. Other times it brings out the worst. And you do have unscrupulous contractors out there who may try to take advantage of the situation. FEMA has actually already done a good job putting out a fact sheet, warning people, here's how not to get ripped off. And our Division of Consumer Affairs within the Attorney General's office has put out a press release on the same thing. And Consumer Affairs is also putting information at the disaster resource centers set up by FEMA to make sure, number one, you're hiring a contractor and how you should, what kind of things you should be looking at to vet a contractor. And number two, making sure you're not getting ripped off by charitable fraud or other things. Governor, I'll share with this website and certainly get it out through Deb's network too. Really both of those fact sheets that are a bullet by bullet kind of checklist to make sure you hire a proper contractor and warning signs to look out for.
Patrick, if I went on disasterassistance.gov, could I find that checklist from FEMA?
I'm not sure about that checklist. I think that was a state resource. However, I would like to say, Governor, that you are correct. There's a special place in hell for people who prey upon disaster survivors. There's also a special place in federal prison. And FEMA has a fraud hotline and a fraud website. It's the email address to report suspicious activity of people who may be preying upon disaster survivors, be they contractors or charitable frauds like Dan mentioned, is stopfemafraud@fema.dhs.gov. And we have a toll-free number, 866-223-0814. There's also a web link that's a little long for me to read out, so I'll send it in to the moderator to put out an email.
All righty. Very helpful. Senator.
Governor, can I ask Mr. Cornwell a couple of questions that I always get that I think might help all of the universe watching?
Certainly.
Okay, so one is, do religious institutions have the right to claim assistance from FEMA? Two is, when I apply to FEMA, how long is a reasonable amount of time before I should be getting some type of response? Because I often hear that. And three, do I need a denial if I have insurance? Do I need a denial from my insurance company first before I can apply to FEMA for assistance?
Great questions.
Yeah, they certainly are. These are the questions that come up and vex disaster survivors all the time. The religious institution question, it is possible that we may be able to help them. The Small Business Administration may be able to help for one thing. For another, if they work through their local officials, if they're providing some sort of essential community service through FEMA's public assistance program, where we reimburse local governments for their expenses and damages, we may be able to help them through that program. Secondly, the amount of time for things to turn around, we usually say from the time people register with FEMA to get contacted by an inspector, that'll be the first step. An inspector has to come and verify the disaster-related damages. The turnaround time in New Jersey has actually been very quick. It's been 3 to 4 days. However, if you haven't heard in say 10 to 14 days, I would suggest calling back. A common problem is that people who are, for example, displaced from their normal residence, their contact information has changed. So the inspector didn't get a hold of them and they're just sort of put back in the queue. So if you call us back at the 1-800 number, 1-800-621-FEMA, that'll just re-kickstart that. After the inspection, it really depends on what kind of assistance they would qualify for. As I said earlier, one of the quickest ways we can get people help is for a place to stay. So if your home is uninhabitable, that money would go out very quickly within a few days. And then tying into your other question, it could take longer if, for example, we're pending an insurance decision to determine what the uninsured losses are. Now, even if you have insurance, you should register with your insurance company first because it'll help the process along. But you can register with FEMA at any time. However, we might sort of put you on pause, as it were, pending submission of your insurance documentation. If you have immediate needs, we may put money out before you have that for a place to stay, for example. But also when you get a letter from FEMA, be it by email or letter, and it's even if it says the word denial in it, read it very carefully, because sometimes it says pending submission of insurance documentation, and once you submit that documentation, if there are uninsured losses that FEMA would cover, you could still get assistance. So,
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Patrick. Deb, can we go back to you?
Sure, and the senator covered a few good questions in the chat box, so thank you for that. But the next one I want to follow up on is from Jose in Montclair, who asks about being the president of a homeowners association, and that the buildings sustained extensive damage in the basement, and they were asked to vacate. But these items and the system's damage were considered common events, such as sprinklers. And he's not sure whether FEMA or SBA might be able to help with those types of damage.
So that, Patrick, sounds to me like it's in that category we discussed a few minutes ago, where it may be common damage, but if he's being prevented, is he being prevented, Deb, from going back in? Or is he?
Being told it's uninhabitable right now is what is written.
So that's the key, isn't it, Patrick?
that's correct, sir. If it's uninhabitable, then we can help the residents with somewhere else to stay until they can make it habitable. In terms of making it habitable, the homeowners association may qualify for Small Business Administration, just as a business would, to make those repairs.
Is that where the association should go first, to the SBA?
The association itself should probably go straight to the SBA. The individual homeowners should go to FEMA for rental assistance.
So that's an important, that's a big, I'm going to put a flashing light around that. So a homeowners association is treated as a small business essentially and goes to the SBA lane. The gentleman who asked the question, Jose, it's in this category. It sounds like no damage to his apartment, but damage to common infrastructure. It sounds like in the basement, but it's in an uninhabitable. He should go to FEMA, disasterassistance.gov.
Correct. And also let me say that any landlord who had damage to the apartment, or any tenant who had structural damage, it's the landlord's responsibility, but the landlord might be able to get help through the Small Business Administration also. I
was going to ask you that. Should the landlord go to the SBA first?
Yes, sir.
Okay. That's another important, even if it's a for-profit or nonprofit or a co-op, it does not make a difference.
Yes, sir. They should all pursue a Small Business Administration. They may be able to help any of those categories.
Okay. Great to know. Thank you. Deb.
I have a number of questions around mold. The basement didn't take on a significant amount of water or damage, but now there is mold there. Is that something that FEMA can provide assistance for remediation? This one question I have is from Marcia in Newark, but there were a number of these.
Okay. Patrick?
Yes, we can help with that. We have line items, as it were, in our assistance for cleaning and sanitizing. And let me also say that mold damage can spread very quickly and be very serious damage. So I encourage people to seek help and advice on how to properly clean up after a flood, and if you have any mold, to take immediate remediation action. And we might be able to help you with reimbursement for the cost of that.
Thank you for that. Deb, do we have any? We got Sarah Edelman on, who's doing a great job running the Department of Human Services. Any questions about psyche, mental health, anything related on that front?
I don't see any right now in the chat box. I do have some people who are concerned about the questions we received in advance about food insecurity, as they're in temporary housing, may not have kitchens, what kind of assistance they could get in that department.
Sarah, any wisdom on that front? And good to have you.
Sure. Good morning. Yes, a couple of things for food assistance. For individuals and families that were enrolled in the SNAP, the Federal Food Assistance Program, prior to Tropical Storm Ida, there are a couple of resources that we've been able to seek federal approval for under the governor's leadership. So the first is, if you lost any food that you had already purchased with your food assistance benefits in Tropical Storm Ida, you can get replacement benefits on your EBT card for those for the lost foods. You have until September 30th to do that. So you should contact your local Board of Social Services to request replacement benefits on your SNAP cards if you did lose benefits. We've also been able to get approval for you to use your SNAP benefits to purchase hot and prepared foods until September 30th. So, during a time like this, worrying about where to get a warm meal should not be on your list of things to do. So through the end of this month, you can also use those EBT benefits to purchase hot foods and prepared foods at your local retailers that accept SNAP. The other food option is that our Office of Emergency Management is still coordinating feeding operations in response to Ida with our local partners, the Salvation Army, Red Cross, and the Community Food Bank of New Jersey. So we've already distributed 25,000 meals to those in need in affected counties, and those operations continue. So if you're not a SNAP recipient family, but you do need food assistance, there are options available through those local resources as well.
Can you feed, Sarah, can you feed the websites and phone numbers to Deb for her blast email?
Absolutely, will do. And
Thanks.
Governor, on the mental health side of things, I'll just add a couple of words on that, if that's okay. Disasters are obviously not only physically challenging, but they are emotionally challenging too. And we have crisis counselors available to help talk to you or your family members if you need it. So we have folks stationed at all of the disaster recovery centers in the affected counties. If you want to talk to someone in person, a trained crisis counselor, a trained professional. We also have a New Jersey Mental Health Care's helpline. It's open 7 days a week from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And you can call 1-866-202-HELP. And we have live trained professional crisis counselors there to talk you through any of the things that you're going through right now. So please don't hesitate to use those as resources.
Sarah, thank you for all the above. The mental health piece, countless conversations with homeowners and small businesses. I've spent 18 months getting clobbered by a pandemic, remote learning. My shop was closed, and then this thing right between the eyes, and that's the reason I raise it. And thank you for the food insecurity details as well. Deb, let's keep rolling here.
Aisha from Piscataway, who I might guess is connected with Rutgers there, or what are some of the resources that college students may access if they or their families were impacted? Are there resources for students enrolled and independent students who are supporting themselves as a result of harm caused by Ida?
So was it Aisha?
Aisha, yes.
So this is a student, probably a student at Rutgers, whose family's been impacted. And the question is there any indirect avenues of benefit for that student because the family may not be able to be as strong, supportive wise as they would have been before? Is that basically?
That sounds right.
Anything, gentlemen, ladies, that we've got out there on that front?
Yeah, Gov, I'm happy to take a shot at this. I think to the extent and this is assuming what the situation is, it's a student living on off-campus housing or something like that had flood damages. So essentially they fall into that renter box. So first and foremost, they should see if they have rental assurance. At the same time, they should probably apply at FEMA-disasterassistance.gov to see if they qualify for anything there. Assuming they are a renter, they're in the state, they're impacted by Ida. Patrick, I'll let you disagree, but I think they would be eligible for FEMA individual assistance, potentially if they're in the right area.
If they're a renter and had storm-related damages or housing needs, then certainly, if the question has more to do with financial stability, because their family suffered losses, well, we may be able to help their family with those losses and needs, and maybe that'll take some of the economic burden off of that.
So those are two good answers. It depends for Aisha. If it was her place, she's no different than she's renting. She's no different than some other renter, right? So just because she's a student doesn't put her into a different category. And if it's her family that's been impacted, I don't know off the top of my head, although we should ask Brian Bridges or the student loan folks. I don't know off the top of my head money that could go to her, but Patrick makes the point that her family could well have some support if their home was damaged. Let's try to squeeze off a couple more here in our time together, and then we should think through, all of us, whether or not, I know you're going to send a blast email out, whether or not we should do another one of these to encompass folks who may not have been able to make it at this time. But Deb, let's throw out
Will do. We'll also try to make sure that campus food banks and assistance resources are listed, at least for Rutgers, on the email we send out.
It shines a light on something which Sarah knows well. One of the big food insecurity populations in our state are students in college. So that they start from a tough place.
Exactly.
Okay.
All right, Amanda from New Brunswick wants to know what kind of financial assistance may be available to people regardless of immigration status, particularly those who are undocumented.
Yeah, I mean, this is a big one, right? So Patrick, let's start with you, and then we'll broaden the group.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for asking that question. It's something that's going to affect a lot of New Jerseyans for sure. First of all, FEMA can only provide assistance to someone who's lawfully present in the United States, but we can provide that assistance to any one member of that household. So any one member of that household can provide that substantiating documentation, then that's who the assistance will go to for, on behalf of the entire household, for one. For another thing, FEMA doesn't necessarily share the information that we take in. So, for example, just because I work for the federal government doesn't mean I can access the no-fly list just because I want to poke around in there. Nor can other federal agencies just poke around in our data and go fishing looking for undocumented immigrants, for example. So yeah, I would encourage anyone who's suffered damages, regardless of their status, to register with FEMA. And if for some reason we can't help you, we'd be happy to refer you to voluntary agencies who can.
So Patrick makes an important point, and this is something that we talk about this all the time with getting vaccinated. You're not going to get outed in terms of your status, and folks have to trust that, because if they can't, then they're going to go without, and that's just an unacceptable result.
And Governor, one follow-up on that point, just on the state side of things, and Patrick brings up a good point, and the question is a good one. Oftentimes, to apply for federal assistance, you need a social security number. And there's workarounds around that. Patrick's highlighted some of them, but I wanted to highlight, Governor, you announced, and we're in the process of launching with DHS, the Excluded New Jerseyans Fund, which is using COVID funding to potentially provide funding to the undocumented population who missed out on federal stimulus payments from COVID. And I know Sarah and her team at DHS are working furiously on this. That's going to be launched later this year. And that's a potential source of relief to undocumented families as well.
Well said. Pat, let me ask you a question. First of all, extraordinary heroism by police, fire, EMS, first responders. Had lunch with Pat Colligan last week, and he said that he thinks that conservatively 12 to 15 officers could have lost their lives, but for extraordinary luck and extraordinary heroism. So hats off to you and all your folks in uniform, regardless of the color of that uniform. We had some, on the other side of the coin, we had some unfortunate looting early on in some communities. I know we had it in Manville, and I spoke to a mayor. I think I forget the town. I assume that's been addressed and that's no longer an issue, but wanted to just acknowledge the heroism and just check in with you on that one.
Thank you, Governor. Yes, those reports, we did have troopers for a few nights in Manville. I talked to the chief, who was not only a professional, but a personal friend, and have not our almost daily connectivity with chief law enforcement officers from around the state. Those set standing meetings that we have, those reports dissipated almost within a week with regards to that. But thank you.
Thank you. And last night, just now that I've got you, I read at one point there were 8,000 outages. Any other damage or update you've got?
That was probably the peak, Governor, from what I got from the president of BPU, Joe Fiordaliso. I think we're under about 1,000 this morning. So the service providers, once again, just doing a phenomenal job. There were some spots that the roads were closed and working with DOT and managed through that. But as you can tell, it's good to see the sun this morning, and looking forward to a beautiful weekend. Thank
God. Amen to that. Deb, let's squeeze one, maybe do one more, and then I wanted to ask Senator Menendez if he had any words of wisdom before he broke.
Sure. My last question then is something that I'm sure the senator has heard a lot about, has worked very hard on. And we have someone from Seabright whose name I didn't get, but Seabright Borough, the gentleman wants to know, is there concern, and what are the protections against receiving duplication of benefits and then facing clawbacks later on down the line? Many people who live through Sandy know this experience and are concerned about it and want to try to prevent it at the front end.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like, Bob, with your blessing, I'd love Patrick to address this in this particular context, but you've had more experience with clawbacks and all the emotion around that than anybody.
This is my internet connections.
There you go. You just came, we heard you there, but Patrick, can you address it specifically to Ida? And I'd love Senator Menendez to address it more broadly. Patrick?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I had trouble with the audio. What was the question?
I apologize. We've got some, can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
We've got a resident in Seabright who's worried about clawbacks. And this is obviously continues to be, not at the pace that it was many years ago, a huge issue with Sandy, impacted Sandy residents. And any observations you've got on clawbacks potentially, so folks think they've got the sufficient amount of resources only to find out down the road that they've got to give some of that back.
Oh, I see. I'm sorry. I was unfamiliar with the term clawbacks.
Yeah.
Duplication of benefits, I think, is the term we usually use.
Yeah.
And recoupments. Yeah. What happened in Sandy was that New Jersey implemented a program based on HUD funding that was part of a supplemental appropriation following the disaster. So FEMA administered its programs, and then when these additional programs came online further on down the line, the federal rules of duplication of benefits made some people ineligible for that second round of assistance because they'd already received assistance on that, for the same damages, for example. And some of that was obviously unfair. For example, some people took SBA loans and then later on found out, well, if they hadn't taken the loan, they could have gotten a grant. So what's happened in that time is the Disaster Recovery Reform Act included some language that made an exception so that we can make exceptions for that kind of duplication of benefit. It would require a specific request about a specific circumstance and program in order to be able to waive that. But there's also just some simply awareness in terms of crafting that any programs based on supplementary funding. And actually, Senator Menendez, some people from your office raised those questions on a congressional call last week.
Patrick, I'd love to flip to Senator Menendez, who has dealt with this duplication and clawback phenomenon for many years and has been a leader on it. Senator.
Yeah, well, thank you, Governor. Before I answer, can I just ask Patrick to make sure that all the 430 people who are watching, but that duplication of benefits doesn't necessarily apply when FEMA sends you to small business and then small business sends you back, assuming that in anywhere in that chain you qualify. That's not a duplication of benefit issue, right?
No, sir, that is not a duplication of benefit. That's all part of the same federal disaster
Right.
assistance process.
Great
So
clarification.
those watching know that they should maximize their opportunities based on the process that exists already. As Patrick said, this was a unique set of circumstances. The previous administration used monies from a HUD funding, but the basic unfairness, in my view, to New Jerseyans who did not have the notice at the end of the day that was going to be the results is something that we're still working on. There's a universe that has been dwindled down that, the federal government is seeking to claw back money that they got. We think that's fundamentally unfair because of all of the attenuant circumstances that were applied. We're in the midst of working on that to get a final resolution to it. And I'm cautiously optimistic that we'll get there. But I don't want anybody who either went through that experience or is listening to this not to apply to the very process that Patrick talked about, that you go to FEMA, they send you to SBA, maybe SBA helps you somewhat, but still sends you back to FEMA. That's not subject to everything we're talking about.
No, that's a great point. I cut off one thing and we've only got about 30 seconds. I can't tell you how many people I've spoken to who have lost their car. Is that fair, Deb? And car insurance and what's covered, what's not? Marlene, can you give us a quick sound bite as to advice for folks in that category?
Yes, of course, Governor. As a matter of fact, I was just answering a question on the chat box with regards to this topic. If your auto policy has comprehensive coverage, then they should reach out to their insurance company, which will take care of it. If the policy does not have comprehensive, then what we have been advising consumers is to reach out to FEMA. And
Patrick,
of course, Patrick,
you're
I'm
good
sorry.
with that?
Yeah, FEMA may be able to help with that, as well as the Small Business Administration may be able to help as well. But if you register with FEMA, and we'll cover uninsured losses like anything else. And if FEMA may be able to help, or the Small Business Administration.
Listen, this has been, I hope, informative for folks. Deb is going to follow up with a blast email to everybody who's been on. And depending on the demand, we may want to do this again. And I will just say unequivocally, assuming we can all make the time, we will do it again because we promise to stand with you folks until you get back on your feet. So I want to thank Senator Bob Menendez, Patrick Cornbill, who's the federal coordinator at FEMA, Deb Kornavaca for being our convener, and then my colleagues in government, Sean LaTourette, Marlene Caride, Dan Kelly, Sarah Edelman, Colonel Pat Callahan, and most importantly to each and every one of you out there, disasterassistance.gov. To me, that's the overriding, most important website you need to know. Start there for most of what we're talking about. If it's a small business, SBA.gov. There are a lot of other websites and phone numbers we'll get back out to you. But hang in there, folks. God bless you. We are with you. And again, if we need to do this some more, we will do it. Take care, folks.